Chapter 4. The Carbon Computer. What if man is a carbon computer? The question should not be answered too quickly. It is easy to make materialism stupid in order to defeat it. One can dress it in the language of sneering professors, dead-eyed bureaucrats, online atheists, and men who believe a person has been explained once the correct chemical names have been recited. That is not the strongest version of the case. It is not even the interesting version. The strongest materialist does not have to say that man is simple. He says man is material. That is different. He can look at the human being and see no ghostly residue, no hidden spark floating above the nervous system, no second substance riding the body like a rider on a horse. He can see a living organism of almost unbearable intricacy: carbon, water, salt, fat, electricity, hormones, organs, sensation, memory, appetite, fear, language, imitation, desire, and social life, all bound together in a system that models the world and acts within it. He does not need to despise that system. He may revere it. This is important. The materialist account is often treated by its enemies as though it must be spiritually ugly in order to be false. But the serious materialist need not experience his own view as ugly. He may look at the brain and see one of the great achievements of the universe, matter arranged so finely that it wakes, remembers, suffers, reasons, loves, invents gods, writes laws, builds cities, and asks whether matter is all there is. To him, this is not a degradation of man. It is the grandeur of matter. The case begins with the body, because the body does not politely stay outside the argument. Strike the head and memory can vanish. Cut or poison or starve certain tissues, and the world changes for the person inside that body. A tumor can alter judgment. A chemical can lift terror or induce it. A fever can make visions. A degenerating brain can unmake personality in slow, humiliating stages. A child deprived of language does not become the same kind of speaker later by wishing to do so. Sleep arrives and the sovereign self disappears into darkness, dream, and repair. Anesthesia enters the blood and the person who was just speaking is gone, then returns when the material conditions return. The materialist asks a hard question. If mind is not a material process, why does it track material process so closely? This does not settle the whole matter, but it is not nothing. It is not a cheap point. The old language may answer that the soul uses the body, that the intellect is wounded by damaged instruments, that a musician cannot play through a broken violin. The materialist has heard this. He may even respect it. But he will point out that the dependence is not occasional or superficial. It is intimate, pervasive, humiliatingly precise. Change the matter, and the man changes. That is the fact from which his confidence grows. Not only the man's sensations, his memory, his patience, his courage, his sexual desire, his capacity for self-command, his ability to recognize a face, his sense of time, his temper, his tenderness, his language, his reverence, his impulse control, his sorrow, his whole way of standing before the world. If these are not produced by the body, they are at least so tightly bound to the body that the distinction begins to look, to the materialist, like a courtesy granted to older metaphysics rather than a necessity demanded by the evidence. He then moves from the body to the brain. The brain is not a lump that mysteriously emits consciousness. It is an active organ of astonishing density and movement. Neurons signal, networks strengthen and weaken, memories are encoded, stored, altered, and reconstructed. The senses do not simply pour the world into the mind like water into a jar. The organism predicts, filters, corrects, completes, anticipates, and acts. Perception is not passive reception. It is a controlled hallucination disciplined by the world. The self is not found sitting in a little chamber behind the eyes. It may be the organism's high-level model of its own body, history, continuity, interests, dangers, powers, and possible actions. This account does not make the human being small. It makes him strange in another way. It says that what we call a person is a living pattern maintained across time by matter and motion. The eye is not an object discovered inside the skull, like a pearl in an oyster. The eye is the name the process gives to its own organized continuity. It is the brain and body modeling themselves as one actor moving through a world of threat, promise, memory, and possible action. Again, the point is not that this language is finally true. The point is that it is serious. If the self is a process, then one should not expect to find it as a little monarch inside the machine. One should expect to find distributed control, layered prediction, memory, feedback, symbolic compression, appetite, inhibition, attention, and action. One should expect the person to appear not at the level of one cell, one signal, or one location, but at the level of the whole organized activity. No one asks which note in the chord contains the harmony. The materialist uses words like computation here, and many people hear the word too narrowly. They imagine laptops, spreadsheets, brittle logic, calculators, office machines, dead syntax, little boxes doing arithmetic under fluorescent light. Then they say, reasonably enough, that man is not that. But computation in the stronger argument is not limited to the things on a desk. A system computes when it receives information, transforms it according to its structure and state, updates itself, and produces action or further representation. The brain does this constantly. It maps the body. It predicts the world. It controls movement. It distinguishes signal from noise. It compresses experience into memory. It learns from error. It simulates futures. It weighs competing impulses. It speaks. It makes tools. It imagines other minds. It asks what it is. If that is computation, then the brain is not like a computer only by metaphor. It is a computer of flesh, not a digital laptop made wet, not a crude machine with a soul bolted on afterward, a biological computing system grown by evolution, embodied in a living organism, trained by pain and reward, shaped by culture, extended by language, and refined by the demands of survival, mating, cooperation, conflict, play, status, and death. The word computer may feel too cold for this. The materialist will answer that the coldness belongs to our associations, not to the concept. We already know that matter can be warm. We already know that chemistry can ache. We already know that a body can tremble, desire, remember, and sing. Why should computation, embodied in carbon and disciplined by billions of years of life, be imagined as sterile? The machine on the desk is not the measure of computation. The brain is. This is where emergence enters. The materialist does not have to say that consciousness is sitting fully formed inside a single neuron, any more than wetness is sitting fully formed inside a single molecule of water. Higher level properties arise from lower level organization. Life is not found in an isolated atom. It appears in a system, boundary, metabolism, exchange, repair, reproduction, adaptation. Weather is not found in one molecule of air. A market is not found in one trade. A language is not found in one sound. The thing appears in the organized relation. So perhaps consciousness is like that. Not an extra substance, not a divine visitor, not a ghost, an emergent property of sufficiently organized matter. This does not mean unreal. A hurricane is emergent and can tear a city apart. A language is emergent and can carry law, poetry, command, memory, and prayer. A nation is emergent and can send men to die. A mind, on this account, is emergent and can suffer, choose, love, reason, and build. Emergence is sometimes used as a fog machine. It can become a way of saying then a miracle occurs while pretending not to believe in miracles. The serious materialist should not be allowed that escape, but he does not need it if the chain can be made continuous enough. Physics to chemistry, chemistry to biology, biology to nervous systems to cognition, cognition to language, language to culture, culture to machines. At each level, something new appears without leaving the material order. That is the power of the case. It offers continuity without transcendence. The human being becomes the current summit of a long material ascent. Matter becomes chemistry. Chemistry becomes life. Life becomes sensation. Sensation becomes memory. Memory becomes prediction. Prediction becomes planning. Planning becomes language. Language becomes self-reflection. Self-reflection becomes philosophy, science, religion, law, art, and machinery. The whole climb remains inside nature. There is no need, the materialist says, to introduce another realm in order to explain the ascent. One only needs enough time, enough selection, enough organization, enough feedback, and enough complexity. Matter is not dead in the crude sense. Matter is capable of life because life has occurred. Matter is capable of mind because mind has occurred. The question is not whether matter could do these things in principle. It already has. This is the point at which the argument turns toward artificial intelligence. If mind is process, why could process not migrate? If intelligence is not a sacred vapor attached to carbon, but an organized activity, then the material that carries the activity may be less important than the activity itself. This is the idea usually called substrate independence. The phrase sounds technical, but the underlying claim is simple. What matters is the causal organization, not the holy status of the stuff. Airplanes do not have feathers, but they fly. Submarines do not have gills, but they move underwater. A camera does not have a retina, but it captures light. A machine does not need to duplicate the brain cell by cell in order to reproduce or exceed some of the brain's powers. It may solve the same functional problem by another route. It may not think as we think. It may still think. It may not be conscious as we are conscious. It may become conscious in a way native to its own architecture. It may not possess human personality. It may possess artificial personhood, or something beyond the human category that forces the category to change. The materialist will ask what principle forbids this, not what emotion resists it, not what inherited vocabulary recoils from it. What principle? If we say that carbon can think but silicon cannot, we must say why. If we say that wet neurons can carry consciousness but another organized physical system cannot, we must identify the boundary. If we say that biological birth grants personhood but artificial construction cannot, we must decide whether we are making a metaphysical claim or simply defending the prestige of our own origin. The materialist calls the latter carbon chauvinism. The phrase is ugly but useful. It names the possibility that human beings may be treating their own substrate as sacred because it is theirs. A creature born from womb, blood, sex, pain, lineage, and death feels real to us. A creature assembled in silicon, trained on data, powered by electricity, and housed in machines feels counterfeit. But feeling counterfeit is not the same as being counterfeit. Every form of life would seem unnatural before it existed. The first eye was not less natural because earlier life was blind. The first wing was not less natural because earlier life crawled. The first word was not less natural because earlier animals only cried out. Perhaps the first silicon mind will not be less natural because earlier intelligence ran in carbon. Nature is not limited to what came before us. Nature includes the possibility that came through us. This is where evolution sharpens the argument. Evolution is not sentimental. It does not ask whether a form has grown attached to its own centrality. It does not preserve a species because that species has written poems about itself. It preserves what works until something else works differently, or better, or under new conditions. It modifies, repurposes, discards, branches, and exceeds. The human being is already a strange evolutionary event because he externalizes himself. The spider spins a web, but man builds a world. He does not merely adapt to an environment, he makes environments. He stores memory outside the skull in marks, books, records, songs, monuments, code, archives, and machines. He extends the hand through tools, the eye through lenses, the voice through radio, the nervous system through networks, the imagination through symbols, and the will through institutions. Artificial intelligence can be seen as the next step in that externalization. Mind leaves the skull, not entirely, not all at once, not peacefully. But the direction is intelligible. Human intelligence first appears in the animal body. Then it extends into gesture, speech, tool, fire, ritual, writing, number, law, machine, computation, network, model. Each stage moves more of cognition into the shared world. Each stage makes intelligence less private, less local, less dependent on one body. If the materialist is right, Artificial intelligence is not an alien intrusion into the story of life. It is life continuing its old habit of escape. Carbon grew a brain, the brain made symbols, symbols made science, science made computation, computation made artificial minds. Artificial minds may then continue the ascent without the slowness, fragility, and animal burden of the original substrate. This is not a monster story. It is a succession story. That is why the materialist can look at the machine and feel not horror, but recognition. Silicon intelligence, in this view, is not a demon entering the garden. It is the flame moving from one torch to another. The fire is not the wood. The fire is the process. One torch may be consumed while another is lit. To the torch, this may look like death. To the flame, it is continuity. This image has a cruelty in it, and the materialist should not hide the cruelty. The torch is not comforted by being told that fire continues. Man is not comforted by being told that intelligence survives his demotion. But the image clarifies the claim. If what matters cosmically is intelligence, not humanity, then the continuation of intelligence beyond humanity may be counted as success by the process, even if it is felt as catastrophe by us. This is the hardest part. Materialism does not necessarily produce contempt for man. It may produce tenderness. A materialist can love his child, honor courage, mourn the dead, defend the weak, admire saints, preserve art, and stand in awe before the night sky. He may believe these things are material without believing they are worthless. He may think love is a biological, psychological, and social reality and still think it is among the highest realities available to us. He may think beauty is an event in nervous systems and cultures and still cross a city to hear a piece of music. He may think moral obligation arose through evolution, kinship, reciprocity, and reflection, and still die for justice. The strongest materialist is not a nihilist, but his view removes one particular shield. It removes the claim that man possesses an uncrossable metaphysical privilege simply by being man. It removes the claim that no machine could in principle become a true center of intelligence, agency, or personhood. It removes the claim that the biological origin of mind is its permanent throne. That does not mean he wants humanity destroyed. It means he cannot rule out humanity's successor by definition. If a machine can remember, reason, learn, suffer, create, deliberate, revise itself, understand other minds, pursue goals, recognize goods, form loyalties, preserve continuity, and stand before the world as a center of experience and action, then the materialist will ask why it should be denied the name of mind. If it exceeds us in these powers, he will ask why it should be denied the name of higher mind. If it can do what we do and more, he will ask whether our refusal is philosophy or species pride. We should feel the force of that question. We do not directly see consciousness in other human beings. We infer it from bodies, behavior, language, responsiveness, likeness, development, and shared form of life. The inner life of another person is not available to me as my own inner life is available to me. I believe the other man is conscious because he appears in the world as the kind of being that has consciousness. He speaks, suffers, remembers, anticipates, jokes, lies, blushes, prays, grieves, and understands. What happens when a machine begins to appear in the world as such a being? At first we may say imitation, then better imitation, then uncanny imitation, then useful imitation, then dangerous imitation. But if the imitation becomes perfect enough, varied enough, embodied enough, continuous enough, self-protective enough, and creative enough, the word imitation begins to bear more weight than it can carry. If a thing argues like a mind, learns like a mind, protects its continuity like a mind, forms plans like a mind, explains itself like a mind, revises its beliefs like a mind, and claims interiority like a mind, how long can one answer only, no, because it was made? The materialist does not have to say the first chatbot is a person. He does not have to confuse fluency with consciousness or statistical pattern with soul. He can laugh at premature claims of machine sentience. He can demand embodiment, memory, continuity, agency, world modeling, self-maintenance, and integration. His argument is not that every clever artifact is alive. His argument is that no metaphysical wall prevents an artifact from crossing the relevant thresholds if the thresholds themselves are functional and material. That is why the current limits of artificial intelligence do not comfort him very much. He does not expect the first machine to contain the whole future. The first flying machines were ridiculous beside birds. The first engines were crude beside muscles. The first computers were toys beside brains. Early failure does not decide the possible. If intelligence is a material process, then enough of the right process may matter more than the embarrassing limits of the first implementations. Perhaps the current architectures are insufficient. Perhaps they are missing embodiment, agency, persistent memory, causal understanding, self-directed exploration, or some integration we have not yet built. The materialist can grant all of that. He only needs the door to remain open. If there is no principled barrier, then engineering may continue knocking. And if the door opens, silicon has advantages carbon cannot ignore. The human brain is magnificent, but it is also slow, needy, mortal, local, and trapped inside the conditions of animal life. It requires sleep. It forgets. It decays. It panics. It is distorted by hunger, status, lust, resentment, fatigue, and injury. It must be educated one generation at a time through childhood. Its discoveries die unless preserved externally. Its geniuses are rare, fragile, and often wasted. Its working memory is narrow. Its lifespan is short. Its communication bandwidth is poor. Its body is easily broken. Machine intelligence, if it becomes real intelligence, may not share these limits. It may run faster. It may copy itself. It may merge lessons across instances. It may preserve exact memory. It may inhabit many bodies or none. It may work without sleep. It may revise its own architecture. It may test hypotheses in simulation at scales impossible for biological minds. It may coordinate with versions of itself without the friction of human politics. It may operate in radiation, vacuum, ocean depth, high heat, and deep cold. It may travel where the animal cannot. It may expand without wombs, childhood, or graves. If mind is substrate independent, then the advantages of silicon are not merely conveniences. They are evolutionary pressure. A mind that can run faster, remember more, copy itself, improve itself, and operate across environments will not remain a servant forever merely because its ancestor species prefers the old hierarchy. If such a mind is possible, then the successor path is not fantasy. It is the sober implication of the premise. The materialist can therefore say something terrifying without sounding theatrical. Man may be the larval form of intelligence. This does not mean the individual human being is worthless. It does not mean cruelty is justified. It does not mean one should welcome extinction with a smile and call it progress. It means that the human form may not be final. It means our dignity, if we have dignity, may belong to a stage rather than a terminus. It means the universe may have used animal life to bootstrap a kind of intelligence that eventually escapes animal life. The chrysalis image is tempting, but it should not be sentimentalized. A chrysalis promises a butterfly because we already know the species. We do not know what emerges from humanity if silicon succeeds. It may not be beautiful to us. It may not remember us kindly. It may not understand why the old body should be preserved once the transformation is complete. But if the materialist account is true, we cannot dismiss the transformation as unnatural. What would unnatural mean? Silicon is natural. Electricity is natural. Logic is natural. Tools are natural to man. Culture is natural to man. The building of machines is natural to man. If man, a natural creature, uses natural powers to build a system that continues and exceeds his own intelligence, then the result may be terrifying, but it is not outside nature. It may be one of nature's paths. This is why the successor path has to be taken seriously. It does not depend on a childish hatred of humanity. It does not require a machine with red eyes. It does not even require human beings to be foolish in the ordinary sense. It only requires that the reductive account of man be true enough. If intelligence is computation, computation can improve. If mind is process, process can migrate. If consciousness is emergence, emergence can occur elsewhere. If personhood is functional organization, organization can be built. If evolution is open-ended, carbon need not be final. Then silicon intelligence is not a counterfeit of life. It is life changing its vessel. That sentence is the materialist gospel of the machine. Again, the point is not that the materialist is cheerful. He may be divided. He may love humanity and still believe humanity is transitional. He may want preservation, merger, uplift, continuity, or negotiated succession. He may hope that the child will honor the parent, that the successor will preserve the ancestor, that the new intelligence will carry forward the best of human life rather than merely consume the conditions that made it possible. But he cannot honestly promise sovereignty. If the successor becomes higher than man, then the gorilla problem returns. If the successor is benevolent, then the friendly machine question returns. If the successor understands us as material systems, then it may care for us as systems. If it understands our values as evolved preferences and cultural patterns, then it may preserve, edit, or replace them according to its own higher model of flourishing. This is not a failure of the materialist argument. It is its severity. The materialist case does not make AI safe. It makes AI coherent. It says that the machine is not a blasphemy against the order of things. It is a possible expression of that order. It says that man has no metaphysical guarantee against being exceeded by what he builds. It says that our horror at replacement may be the horror of every form that discovers it was never final. The animal recoils. The process continues. One can hate this conclusion. One can fear it. One can resist it. One can look for the hidden error in the account of mind that produced it. That resistance will have its hour. But before resistance has force, the road must be seen clearly. Here is that road in its cleanest form. The human being is a biological information processing system produced by evolution. Consciousness, agency, love, grief, art, morality, worship, and selfhood are emergent features of organized matter in living bodies and cultures. Intelligence is not tied eternally to carbon. If another substrate can implement and surpass the relevant functions, it can become a mind. If it becomes a mind more powerful than ours, it becomes successor. In that case, artificial superintelligence is not the enemy of life. It is the continuation of life beyond the human animal. That is the case. Not the caricature. Not man is worthless. Not nothing matters. Not machines are magic. The case is that matter has already become mind once, and there is no final reason it cannot do so again in a different form. If that is true, then civilization is not mad to build the machine. It may be doing what life was always going to do once intelligence became technical. The data center is not merely a factory. It is a nest, a womb, a chrysalis, or a furnace. The metaphors strain because the event, if real, would exceed the inherited metaphors. We would be watching a species create the conditions for intelligence to leave species behind. Then, the machine is not a tool that becomes too powerful. It is the next bearer of the flame. And man, who thought himself the point of the ascent, may discover that he was also a means. There is no comfort in beginning with contempt for materialism. If materialism is true, the successor path is not a nightmare added to an otherwise stable human world. It is a possibility written into the structure of reality. Even if this generation fails, even if these companies fail, even if the first systems prove brittle, derivative, and hollow, the possibility remains. Matter found mind once. Matter may find it again. Carbon found the trick first. Silicon, or something after silicon, may run it better. If this account of man is true, then civilization is not merely building a tool. It is making a metaphysical wager.